Hi guys, and welcome to Studio Wildlife. So this is my first ever live stream, so I apologise if the audio isn't fantastic, as I had a little bit of trouble with my mic not connecting to my MacBook, so hopefully it's loud enough for you to actually hear and you can see what's going on quite well. I've not got a proper webcam set up yet, so this is just a Canon camera that is connected to my Mac using a webcam utility. Hopefully the quality is okay. Hi, nice to see you. Thank you for joining. So yeah, this is my first Sketchathon piece. So I started this last night and finished it this morning. I've not actually filmed this one because I needed something to post and have up on the screen. But basically for today, I've got 5 more paintings that I'm planning on doing, all about this size. So these are 8-inch by 10-inch canvas boards. I think they are backed a little bit, so they've got a nice solid surface. Don't know if you can see that, just there. They've got a nice solid surface, which is really nice for painting on. So yeah, I've got this first cheetah, and I'm just using acrylics for this. And yeah, I just thought I'd share with you my process. So as some of you will be aware, all of these paintings are going towards the Artists for Painted Dogs Sketchathon. So when I complete a painting, it will be available for purchase on the Artists for Painted Dogs website, which I will be putting in a link in my description. So if you look in the description, you'll find a link to the website. There's loads and loads of original paintings and loads of sketch-a-thon pieces as well. So my sketch-a-thon pieces, each one is going to be up for £140, and 50% of that will be going towards wildlife conservation, with the 3 charities. It's Wildlife ACT, Game Rangers International, and I can't remember what the other one was. If someone is watching and remembers what the other charity was, please just pop it in the chat so people can see. So okay, so what I'm going to do, I'll just show you all of the pieces. If you have any questions throughout the stream, please just feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to talk with you guys. So just ask away and I'll see what I can do. So we've done the cheetah, so I will put the cheetah to one side. Again, this is going to go up on the Artists for Painted Dogs website. So if you would like to purchase this one, I'll just hold it up so you can see it a little bit more. If you would like to purchase it, it is £140, and 50% of that will be going to wildlife conservation charities, and you can buy it through the Artists for Painted Dogs website. Okay, hi DJ. So the ones that I am going to be painting today are going to be this polar bear. So we have a nice polar bear. I've got a grizzly bear or a brown bear. I'm not sure which one it is yet. Thank you, Aditya. Okay, I've got a wolf, as you can see there. I've got a panda. And I've got a gorilla. I thought I'd do them all walking. I don't really do full bodies of animals very often, so I thought I'd do something new and I'd try and get them done as quickly as possible. And I think a full body will be a little bit easier than just a whole face, because it's going to be a little bit smaller on the screen, a little bit smaller on the canvas, so I won't have to use as much paint. So I think I'm going to start with the panda first, and then for the rest, I'll just ask you guys to just tell me which one you prefer to see next. So we've got the gorilla, we've got the wolf, we've got the brown bear or the grizzly bear, not sure which one it is, and we've got the polar bear. So if at any point you decide you want to see one of them, please just let me know, and I will get started on that one afterwards. So again, just to confirm, this cheetah is now up on the Artists for Painted Dogs website. So if you want to find that, just click the link in the description of this live stream and you should be able to get sent right there. to go and purchase it. Okay, so let's make a start with this panda. Hopefully everything's in focus. Hopefully you can see everything. It looks okay on my end. Hopefully you can hear me as well. I'm not too sure about the sound and how well the sound is doing because it's just coming through my Mac. I had some problems with my microphone. I think if I am going to be doing more of these live streams, which I really do hope I can do, and I hope more people watch it, uh, then I'm hoping to upgrade some of my equipment so it sounds better and looks a little bit better. Oh, thank you for responding. That's really, really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to start by just putting out a basic colour palette. I'm just using a mix of some Daler-Rowney paints and some Sennelier abstract paints, and I've got some of these Studio Pebeo acrylics, so nothing too expensive, all relatively cheap and affordable paints. So we'll see how it goes. Hi, Leanne. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining all the way from Australia. So I'm going to start with black, which is what I've put out there. And then I am going to use some raw umber next. So we've got some raw umber. Sorry you can't see my palette. The filming setup that I was going to do wasn't quite working. The cable that I was using wasn't quite long enough to show my palette as well. So I'm just going to show the painting, and I'll just talk you through which colours I'm using and what I'm doing in my process. So let me just have a look at what other colours I'm going to be using. I need to find it. Hi, all the way to India as well. Thank you guys for joining. So I'm going to use a little bit of burnt umber as well. So a little bit of a different brown. This one is a System 3 Daler-Rowney one, but it's just reached the end of its life. So I'm going to chuck that in the bin now. And then I'm also going to use some burnt sienna. So this Daler-Rowney Graduate Burnt Sienna. And then what else am I going to use? I'm going to use some raw sienna. This is one of my favorite colors to use for wildlife. It's a really nice sort of yellowy, orangey, a very like yellowy, earthy color. And it's really good for things like tigers. So the highlighted bits on the tigers and in that orange fur, but it's also really good for lion's fur as well. So one of the best colors that I use. Oh, thank you so much, Leanne. Okay, I'm also going to use some yellow ochre. So this is just that Pebeo ochre. Hi, Paul. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining. So we've got some yellow ochre. I'm also going to use a little bit of cadmium yellow. So cadmium yellow hue. I feel like I'm going to do a few greens in this background here. So I want that yellow to be able to change some of the greens a little bit to adjust them to have that little bit more variation. I'm also going to use some green and some blue. So here's some blue. Feel free to paint along if you want to as well. So we've got our green and our blue down. And then I'm also going to get a little bit of red, because I think in my panda fur, I'm going to have a few little purples. So I'm going to put some red down here as well. And then finally, I've just got this big abstract Sennelier white that I'm going to use. Hi, Carlene. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining. So I've put some white down as well. Okay, I should make a note that I am recording this, so if you can't stick around for the whole live video, I will be recording it and I will be uploading it to the YouTube channel, so you will be able to watch it at a later date. So don't worry if you can't watch it all. Just thank you so much for joining, and I do really like all the comments. I like talking to you guys, so please just keep the comments coming, and I will try to respond to them as best I can. It might get a little bit difficult when I'm painting because I do tend to get focused on the painting, but I will try to glance up every now and then to see and read your comments. So for this one, all I've done is quickly sketched out the panda. Yeah, I could have sketched this out with paint, but I thought to save time, I would just sketch it out last night so that it's there and I can just get straight on with the painting. So for this panda, I think I want it in sort of like a greeny bluey background. And I'm going to keep my backgrounds quite loose and thin washes, I think is the best way to describe them. So I'm going to start with just a basic bit of green. So just the green straight out of the tube for now. And I'm really, really going to water it down. I'm using this large sort of 1-inch flat brush that you can see here, and I'm just going to start to wash over the background. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but can you see how this might happen in your art as well? But you can see how some of these sort of like white dots are appearing in the paint, and it's not quite going on smoothly. That is because there's not enough pigment in the paints. Because they're quite cheap paints, when you add water to them, the acrylic molecules, to put it simply, they don't bind together as well, so they don't bind on that canvas. Whereas if you thinned it out with like a medium, like an acrylic paint thinner, that acrylic paint thinner has acrylic molecules inside it. So when you try to do this, it won't create all those little dots. What those little dots usually mean is that you've got too much water. So in terms of how I figure out how detailed my subjects are going to be, um, I tend to overdo it a little bit as well. I always have to try and stop myself from putting too much detail in, and it's a really difficult thing to do because I do get lost in painting details. I really, really enjoy getting my head really like sort of like here, really close with a tiny little brush, getting in all those little details. And I think that's okay for the parts that you want in focus. I think my best tip is to choose where you want the focal points of your picture to be. And then that's where you want all the detail. That's where you want to be using the small brush. And then as you move further out, so let's say I want all the detail in this face, then the legs here, I might use a bigger brush for the fur. And instead of focusing on individual strands of fur, I'm going to just use sort of fur clumps instead, using a bigger brush. So like on the face, I might use a small round brush like this. Whereas on the legs, I might use this sort of frayed angle brush, which is a little bit bigger. And then for the back, round here, I might use something a little bigger. Let me see if I've got something. For the back, I might even just use sort of like a big filbert brush, like this, on its side, just like this, trying to keep it quite loose. So then all your details and the important bits where everyone's going to be looking, that's going to be found in the center of the focal point in that face, and it's not going to look like overly wet. Hopefully that's helpful. So while I've been talking, I've just mixed up another colour. So I've got a little bit of my green, a little bit of my blue, and a little bit of my black, just to create a bit of a sort of a dark turquoise. And I'm just literally just over the canvas, not too bothered about where just yet, just trying to give this little wash. Doesn't have to be absolutely amazing, just splashing it on. Let's now just show you a little technique. So with the last cheats painting, for the background, I just did something a little bit new. And just because I wanted some variation to the background colours, literally just got a piece of tissue and I just started to dab away some of the colours, just like this. And I just thought it really gave this like nice sort of foliage, this soft, almost out of focus background effect. I thought that was really, really effective. So yeah, it's definitely something worth trying. Gives these nice textured patterns. I like having these textured patterns in my backgrounds, just because it just adds that little bit more interest to the painting, in my opinion, and I just find it looks a little bit better. Right, what am I going to do next? If you have any suggestions for what I should do with the painting as well, please just add a comment and I will try and do some of those suggestions as well. I like hearing what you think I should do and what you like about the paintings, or even if there's something that you don't like and you think I should change something, please just let me know in the comments. So I'm now mixing up a dark blue colour. Because I want the top of this panda to be in the light, I'm going to try and knock my background back a little bit. So I want it a little bit darker near the top and a little bit lighter near the bottom where the black fur is going to be. So I'm just putting on some of these colours. Let's put some down here as well, just to add to that effect. Okay, I'm liking it so far. Let's just knock back some of this colour with the tissue, add some of that nice abstract foliage effect. That's something I can do. I've never really painted flowers before, but it's something that I could maybe try and do. I once did a pet portrait, and the pet portrait contains some sort of like foliage um, around it. It was a painting of my dog, Charlie. She's a Springer Spaniel. And just around her, I did some of these flowers, but it did look a little bit like a memorial photo, even though she's still with us. So it's not one of my best paintings that I've ever done. Okay. I am liking that so far, I think. Right, what I'm going to do next is something that I've recently started doing, and that is using a toothbrush. So I'm just going to use a toothbrush to splatter some paint onto the canvas. And I'm just going to use the same colour. I'm going to start with some dark, and I'm just dipping my paintbrush in some water and then just dipping it in the paint. So this needs to be very, very watery in order to work. And I'm just going to run my finger over the surface of the bristles and it's going to splatter some paint over that canvas. I'm just going to put my hand there so it doesn't get on my screen. And that's not quite dark enough yet. So it's not quite thick enough, that paint. So I'm just going to add a little bit more paint to the mix and make it a little bit thinner. So we're just going to splatter it on, just using some blue with a little bit of black here. All of my pieces today are going to follow the same sort of theme of these animals sort of coming out of the dust. Or in this case, I think I'm going to make it coming out of a little bit of like water spray, maybe. So we've got some splatters going on. I really like these splatters and these abstract marks. I like this like randomness to it, something that no painting will ever look exactly the same because of all these random marks. So even if somebody else used the same reference photo as me, it's not going to look exactly the same as my piece because I've done all these abstract marks which make it an individual piece rather than, like, say if I was doing a hyper realistic piece and I wasn't doing any abstract marks, then anybody else who was also doing the same photograph and doing the same hyper realistic technique would produce a painting that is exactly the same as mine. And I don't like the idea of that. Obviously, if you're commissioned to make a painting like that, then like there's nothing you can do about that. But if you are creating originals, or if I'm creating originals, I like all these abstract shapes and splashes and variation to the backgrounds and like all this detail, or this lack of detail. Sorry, I just had a text. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to my green just to brighten it up and just have a little bit of variation to the greens that we can see in that background. I'm just doing the same technique, just splattering it over the canvas, just like that. Okay, I think I actually want a little bit of more blue. So I'm taking my blue and I also want it a little bit brighter. So I'm going to add a little bit of white to it as well. And again, same technique, just splattering it over the canvas. Just randomly. You don't need to sort of be worried about where this goes. Just be splattered anywhere. I'm not worried about covering my drawing too much. Most of it's still there. I'm pretty okay with that. And then I always like to add a few white splashes as well, just because I really think the white makes everything pop and makes everything stand out that little bit more. So I'll just add a few little white splashes just here and there. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that background so far. What I am going to do is just very quickly with a small brush, so just a small detail brush like this, I'm just going to outline my panda a little bit more. If you're aiming for realism, I wouldn't recommend redrawing things like this in paint. I think it just detracts from the realism, but I just do it because it's this style of painting that I'm creating. So I'm just drawing around the outline just to establish it a little bit more, almost sort of like trying to make it a sort of sorry. Is it too quiet? Is the sound too jittery? I don't really know what's going on with it. Hopefully it'll fix itself. So all I'm doing at this moment in time is just outlining this there, just trying to get a rough idea of the lines and the drawing. Can other people hear me? Let me try and adjust my sound really quick. I've turned up my input volume, so hopefully that should increase the volume a little bit. Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys, for applying. Yeah, I do apologise for the internet and the lagginess of it. My internet is not great at the minute. So I'm just gonna, as I said, just blocking in these little bits of these lines just here. Yeah, I've not got the best internet anyway, but for live streaming, it's rubbish. When I was doing my biology classes, so when I was teaching biology online during lockdown, the internet always used to drop out and my streams would cut out midway through. So I do apologise if that happens. If that does happen, I will try and get the stream up and running as soon as possible. So just bear with me and stick around as best you can. Okay, I'm going to just type in the chat, Leanne. Leanne, if you try reconnecting to refresh these. Okay. So yeah, hopefully if you try reconnecting, you might be able to refresh the stream. So let's have a look here. So let's just put this back leg in. Just being quite sketchy, quite loose with it, because this is a sketchathon after all. And then where our ears going to be? Our ears are going to be here. Ear 1. Ear 2. Am I entering David Shepherd Wildlife Artist of the Year next year? Yes, I will be. I think it is a fantastic cause. Last year I entered just sort of 5 pieces, um, but only one got in. I don't think I'm going to enter 5 pieces this year, but I'm going to really try and create pieces that send a message, that have something about them. So I'm going to probably enter 2. And I've got some ideas, so hopefully those ideas will work. I will probably record them as well, so you'll be able to see what my paintings are going to be. I'm just using a small detailed brush. I think this one, in fact, I've got one here. So this is a new one. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if it'll focus. Will it focus? Will it focus? Yeah, so it says Boldmere. I think my camera's flipped around, but it says Boldmere. You can get them from a shop in the UK called The Works, and they are literally just sort of like £1, so really, really cheap for 6 detail brushes. They don't last very long. They only last a couple of paintings or a couple of sketches like this, but they're so cheap, it doesn't really matter. But they're really, really good detail brushes. Some of the best detail brushes that I've ever used. I think you can get them from Amazon as well, if you're not in the UK. But Boldmere, I'll just type it. So Boldmere. I've just typed it in the chat so that you can see how it's spelt and everything. So let's get some panda eyes in. I'm not too bothered about like leaning on my canvas either. I think those little sort of like handprints that will eventually show through are going to be quite okay, because it's going to be quite an abstract piece by itself anyway. So just putting those little black eye patches on, just like this. Let's get a little bit of the nose in. Again, if you were going for realism, I wouldn't recommend drawing around your bear or whatever it is you're painting in black. It's going to leave a very drawn look and be very sort of like hard edges, and you don't really want that in your realism. You want nice soft edges, nice soft transitions between the colours, and that's what really like sort of adds to the realism. Whereas this sort of like drawn line is just going to make it look a little bit cartoony. I will lose some of this drawn line, and it doesn't matter for what I'm doing for this, if it is a little bit cartoony. And then let's just pop in some little eyes. Ah, brilliant, Jan. All sorted then? Hear us and see us now? Okay, so that is pretty much sketched out now. So what I'm going to do next is just using that flat brush again. I'm not sure which brand this is. It's just a 1-inch flat brush. I'm just going to sort of do a little bit of a wash of some colours over my panda. So I'm going to take a bit of the black, just mix it with a little bit of blue, just to cool it down a little bit so it's not completely pure black. And on the legs, we're just going to add a little bit of this black, just like this. Right, if you need to be a little bit more precise, just use the side of the brush rather than using it like this. So if you just use the side, you can get more precise lines. And then I'm just, this is just a guide really for later, just a wash to get rid of some of that white canvas underneath. Tell you what I'm going to do as well. I'm going to fade some of this black out using that tissue paper technique I just showed you. So let's put the black in. There we go. And then I'm going to fade some of it out at the bottom just using this tissue paper technique down there. Right, I think that's looking okay so far. And then because I want this to be sort of like a creamy white, I'm going to start with just a like little blocking, taking some raw sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre, and a little bit of white because I like working from dark to light. So I'm going to just do this sort of grey, creamy wash over the white bits of the panda's fur first. So it's not going to look very white yet, but that means I can just add white over the top in later layers just to really get it to pop. So, I know it looks really dark at the minute, but it will look lighter when I start to build up the highlights over the top in a few stages. And I kind of like, can you see how some of the green is showing through the inside of the panda? I quite like that effect, and I think I'll probably keep that effect. Right, I'm just going to mute the stream for a second, just because I'm going to use a hairdryer and I don't want it to go really loud. So I'm just going to use a hairdryer just to dry this off really quickly so I can start working on the next layers. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So because I'm using acrylics, it is okay to use a hairdryer to dry them off. If you were using oils to do something like this, you can't use a hairdryer to dry it because oils don't dry by evaporating water. They dry by reacting with oxygen in the air and oxidizing. So you can't use a hairdryer to do that. It's fine with acrylics, but not with oils. Right, what I'm going to do next is start to pick out some of the shadowy areas and some of the darker bits of this panda's fur. So we're going to start with our blacks. So I'm going to use pure black for this. I'm fine with using pure black in my paintings. I don't mind. I don't mind using it. So I'm just going to start to try and pick out some of the darker bits of the fur, just using a small filbert brush. This is just a basic filbert brush that I got from a pack of about 10 that I got from a shop called The Range. I don't particularly use expensive paintbrushes or expensive equipment. I just like to build up everything in layers, and I find that actually these cheaper paintbrushes that lose their shape quite quickly and start to fray and start to get a little bit old looking, they are actually the best ones for creating fur because they allow you to create these soft patterns. Hi, Sherlock. Okay, so just building up some shadows. Let's put a little bit of shadow on the bottom of this paw. And then let's do the same thing underneath their mouth here. So this is going to all be in shadow as well. I'll show you what I mean about the sort of tuftiness. So if I use this filbert brush, because it's slightly frayed, it leaves these kind of like loose strands of fur, which is really good for these edges. So they're not just solid straight lines. So just building it up. I really like using the filbert brushes for this stage where you're just sort of building this soft fur up because you can use it in two ways. You can use it flat, like this, to sort of block in larger areas, but you can also turn it sideways to get a few thinner, more detailed marks. And it's a really good brush to use at the start of a painting. Okay, so there is our first lot of black there, and then also the back leg down here, and this back leg here also gonna need to be a little bit darker. And again, just gonna tuft those edges slightly, just so it's not as uniform. So I'm actually almost dry brushing this. I'm using two techniques really here. I'm using a watercolor kind of technique where I do thin washes, but I'm also using a dry brushing technique where I'm essentially just scraping thin bits of paint over the canvas. So it leaves, so you can sort of still see the texture of the canvas underneath, which is why I'm sort of like scraping it. One of the big things that I sort of don't recommend if you're doing realistic paintings is sort of every 3 to 4 brush strokes, you want to change your paint or add more paint to your brush rather than like scrubbing the paint into the canvas. You don't really want to be doing that. It just sort of ruins the aesthetic of the painting, in my opinion. I mean, I do it quite a lot, um, and I need to get out of that habit, but it's something that sort of beginner artists do that professional artists don't tend to do. They tend to swap their paint and add more paint to their brushes more often. And that's one of the big tips that I would recommend. And it's one of the things that I'm still learning how to do. And it's one of the things that I wish I could do, is change my paint on my brush more often or add more paint to my brush because it does just make the paintings look so much better. So I'm just putting the black in the ears now. These can just be solid black for now. And then let's just add some black to these. I'll paint over the eyes again in a second, so it doesn't matter if I'm just completely painting them in solid black. Let's just redo the nose. And then this little bit that I've missed here. So we could go in with a little bit of thicker paint now as well, just in some places, just to really, really show that those bits are the parts that are in shadow. So over here as well. Okay. Again, guys, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. It can be about anything. It doesn't have to be about Panda. It could just be about art in general. It could be about me if you want to ask them. Just engage and yeah, I'd love to chat with you. In fact, why don't you tell me about your art? What kind of art are you creating? How long have you guys been painting for or drawing for? What's your favourite thing to paint? Let's just add some bit darker paint up here. Just kind of blend it in a bit. So we're starting to get a little bit of form now, which is nice. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is try and add in some sort of lighter shadows, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is going to take a little bit of blue and a little bit of the burnt sienna paint. and we're going to create this almost sort of warm grey colour because the blue with the orangey burnt umber or the burnt sienna, sorry, the orange and blue are opposite sides of the spectrum, so they are complementary colours or opposite colours. I can't remember which way around it is, but when you mix them together, they desaturate each other, so they make each other a little bit more grey. So we've got this nice, colourful grey that I've just created. Rather than just using black and white, which can look a little bit dead, by making your greys, mixing your opposite colours. So like reds and greens, I believe, yellows and purples, blues and oranges. You can create nice, colourful greys. That's probably a little bit too light for this stage, so I am just going to add a touch of black to it and a little bit more blue. And all I'm going to start doing is just start putting in some highlighted areas. Carlene, sorry. Oh, fantastic! Thank you. Yeah, you should definitely try painting some more. Um, I love it, and the skills that you'll learn from the painting, you'll be able to transfer over to your graphite and coloured pencil work. Um, when I was in school and things, I mostly did graphite drawings. Um, and used pencils, and then sort of branched out into charcoals when I was about 20, which was, God, 7 years ago now. So it's quite a long time ago for me. And yeah, I mostly just drew at that point. I didn't really paint very often, and I only really think I've developed my painting in the last sort of 2 or 3 years. I think before that, I was primarily best at drawing, charcoal drawing, things like that. Last year, I started pastels for the first time as well. I really enjoy using the pastels. I just love all different types of media. I like just creating art. It doesn't matter what kind of art it is, like sculpture, drawings, paintings, building things. Like, I actually made my Halloween costume this year. I used like it was kind of like cosplay kind of thing. I've never done cosplay before or anything, but I just thought I'd give it a go at trying to make a Halloween costume, and it turned out pretty well. I think it was like a superhero costume kind of thing, and I used like foam to put it all together, and I painted it, and yeah, I was pretty pleased with how it turned out. So I've just added a little bit of white to the mix, just to lighten it off a little bit. Again, just sort of tufting it. What have you said, Leanne? So I started last year as May 15th after my It's never too late to start. Like, I know people who painted for a year and their work is amazing. It's just practice and time and putting the effort in. Um, there's no like just because you've only started a year ago doesn't mean you can't be a fantastic artist in however long. It could be a natural gift, but most of the time it is just practice hours in. But it's about putting the right practice in and the right hours. Um, and yeah, like watching videos on YouTube and things, they do help a heck of a lot because it gives you an idea of what to do and what not to do. But really, the best thing to do is just practice and just get stuck in. Don't be afraid to paint something just because it looks difficult. Just give it a go because you'll learn so many different things and so many different techniques just by practicing it and just getting stuck in and doing it rather than just like watching loads of videos. It's good to watch the videos and get the ideas, but then don't be afraid to try and do something that that video does or do something that an artist that you admire does. Just get stuck in and do it, and you'll learn so much by doing that and not being afraid to practice and not being afraid to fail. Okay. Let's go a little bit lighter on a bit of the eyes. And then let's use our lighter colour now. So this is the one that was the blue mixed with the burnt sienna. So this is going to be for some of the highlights up here. Fantastic. Um, yeah, when I first started out, all like friends and family friends were asking me to do all the dogs and the cats and the pets. I've never been asked to do a ferret yet, though. Maybe I'll have to do a video on a ferret at some point. Um, but yeah, I really enjoy doing pet portraits. I've not had any pet portrait commissions for probably about 6 months. So if anyone does want a pet portrait commission, I do them. So just message me or email me or put a message through on Studio Wildlife, and I am more than happy to give you my prices and my details for that. But yeah, I do pet portraits as well. Um, that is something. So Carlene just asked, what tips would you give to loosen up? That is something that I really struggle with. I would say do things like I'm doing here, so these little sketches, because I'm not really focusing on details that much. I'm just trying to block in colours and block in shapes. But loosening up is one of the things that I really struggle with, and it's one of the things that I think if I could figure out how to loosen up my paintings a little bit and focus a little bit less on the details, they would improve so much. Um, it's just maybe some of the things that you could do, and some of the things that I've not actually had the time to try but wanted to try, is trying to reduce the number of brush strokes in a painting. So maybe once a week, try and create a painting just using 50 brush strokes. And then you've really got to think about your brush strokes and really maximize what each brush stroke is doing and what it's saying, and then hopefully that should then loosen up that work, and then you can apply those techniques. So as you start to learn what works and what doesn't, you can apply those techniques to your bigger pictures, and then they will feel looser. um, but yeah, if I had the time, I would definitely be doing that. So like trying to limit my paintings to 50 brush strokes. Just little sketches like these, not huge paintings, just things like this. But by limiting it to 50 brushstrokes, you're going to have to think about everything a little bit more and just pay that little bit more attention to where everything goes. And I think you'll focus less on the details then. Another thing that you could do is just sort of blur your reference photos a little bit, just with Photoshop or something, and then you're not getting bogged down in all the details, especially when you start painting. You could just use Photoshop to blur them, so you're focusing more on just the shapes and the colours rather than all the tiny little fur strands. Right, now I'm going to take some blue and mix it with a little bit of red, just to create a very almost bluey purpley colour, and then mix it with a touch of white. I want to try and start putting some lighter colours into this fur. So just taking this purple, and now I can be a little bit more specific with my brush strokes. So I'm not covering the whole thing. I'm just trying to create this soft looking fur. Just using the side of that filbert brush. So starting to get some shape to this paw now. It's actually a little bit brighter in real life than it's showing on the screen. So it does actually look little bit better for me in real life, but it still has a long way to go before it's going to be finished. I did only want to spend an hour on this piece, but I am actually getting really into it, so I might spend a little bit longer. Has anyone else got any questions? As I said, just feel free to ask away. Okay, let's put a little bit of this blue here, just showing that belly. Okay, I think I'm getting pretty happy with it. What I'm going to do is just put a little bit more red into this mix and take a little bit of burnt umber as well, just to create a sort of like, I want a sort of magenta burgundy colour, like a purpley magenta burgundy colour. This is going to be where the fur transitions into the white fur over here. So I just want this kind of saturated colour before I transition it into that white. I'm also going to put some of this colour underneath here. Um, I am studying my reference photo, so I'm using my reference photo and just sort of towards the left-hand side, I can just see a little bit of sort of this reddy burgundy colour coming through the fur slightly in the black, because the black fur and the white fur is never just always black or always white. There's always colours in there. There's always like reflections of the surroundings. And I think the picture that this was taken on was quite a autumn day. There was some sort of like leaves there, because it is a picture from a zoo, unfortunately. It's not a photo from the wild. And yeah, I think just some of those like reddy, greeny colours are being reflected in the fur. Um, I don't refer to a colour wheel. I can sort of picture what the colour wheel looks like in my head, and I have seen a lot of really, really good and sorry, very, very talented artists use a colour wheel while they work. They have it like up on their wall. Um, I've never done personally. I think through sort of like years of painting, I've grown to understand a little bit where those colours fit, what the complementary colours are, how the colours work well together. But definitely starting out, I would recommend having maybe a colour wheel, or at least doing some colour studies yourself. I remember being in school, and that was one of the things that we did in school was these colour studies and these colour wheels. And a homework was to create these swatch studies of the different colours that you could have, and when they're mixed, and these colour wheels and the complementary colours and the primary, the secondary, the tertiary colours. And yeah, I can kind of remember doing that, and I can remember the colours, and through practice, I know what colours are gonna, or more like, I kind of know what the colours gonna look like when I mix them together. I use pretty much the same palette for whatever painting I'm using. So I have the black, the raw umber, the burnt sienna, the raw sienna, the yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, the blue, the red, the green, and the white. And they're the only colours that I really use, whether I'm painting in oils or whether I'm painting in acrylics. It doesn't really matter. I use the same colours. The other colour that I use is called buff titanium, and that's like a sort of pale yellowy white colour. Um, but because I use the same colours all the time, I've learned how they mix together, and it's just a little bit easier than having that colour wheel there. But it's definitely something that when you're starting out, definitely use that colour wheel and definitely do those colour swatches, because it'll be so helpful to understand how the colours mix together and how they all work together. It will like improve your colour mixing and your theory. And definitely starting out, your colours and your values are way, way, way more important than painting all the details. So if you can get the colours in the right place and you can get all the values in the right place, like all the like lights and the shadows, your painting is going to look way more realistic than a painting that's got loads and loads of details, but the colours aren't right and the shadows and the lighting isn't right. So yeah, definitely focus on getting those colours right. Focus on getting those lights and those shadows right way before you start worrying about details. A good way to check that you've got all the lighting correct is, especially if you're doing coloured paintings, is take a photo of the painting as you're doing it and turn it to black and white on your phone. And if you turn it to black and white, you'll just see those values, you'll just see the lights, and it makes it much easier to see if something isn't quite right. So I'm just putting down this sort of creamy white colour now, just for the base layer of this white fur. Just trying to put a little bit more of a solid base down onto this white fur. So once I've put this layer down, I'm actually going to switch my brush to a smaller detailed brush. And this is where I can start to bring in a little bit more of the detailed fur. I reckon another 20 minutes on this piece and then it'll be finished. So I'm not going to do too much to it. Just going to add the highlights next, paint in the eyes, and then just adjust that background one final time, just to tie in the panda to the background. Because at the minute, it obviously looks like the panda has just been painted over the top of the background, which is exactly what I've done. So I need to just adjust that slightly so it fits with the rest of the painting. So I'm just using that filbert brush on its side, just to add in some tufts of fur, just to make it a little bit softer, make it look less cartoony. Yeah, has anyone else got any questions? Thanks. So I'm just, again, just doing exactly the same thing, just sort of dragging it over, making sure to leave gaps between some of the strands, just trying to create a little bit of variation, showing those layers between those strands of fur. In fact, before I go into the detailed brush, I'm going to just do a little bit of a lighter layer. So I'm going to take some more white and add it to the mix. And I'm also going to make it a little bit yellower because I think that's a little bit too cream. So I'm going to take some of the cadmium yellow as well, just to adjust that colour a little bit. So now with my lighter colour, I'm just going to start to pick out some bits that I want a little bit lighter. Doesn't have to be perfect at this stage. We're just adding a little bit of variation to that white fur, just so that it'll be a little bit more interesting later on. There's a few more colours showing through. It's not just pure white. It's not just completely grey, because that doesn't look interesting. We want as many colours in that white fur as we can possibly get. Like you could have greens, you could have blues, you could have yellows, oranges, reds. Like they all show through in that white fur. Bit too much water in that bit. Okay, so just put in this bit of yellow in. Sort of now starting to randomise it a little bit, just trying to patch it up a little bit, just to give that fur a little bit more interest. So as I said, yeah, this is my first live stream, so hopefully it's going okay. I am going to invest in better microphones. I will invest in a better camera as well, or a better webcam. And I'm going to try and get it so you can see the picture, you can see the palette as well, and you can see me. Because I feel like if I'm there as well, just popping up in the corner, it just makes it a little bit more personable. But I just couldn't do this for this live stream. I don't have the equipment yet to do it. Okay. Okay, so now I'm actually going to take this angled brush that I was talking about before. So it's this frayed angled brush. You could use a non-frayed one, you could use any one that you wanted, but I'm just going to use this one because I quite like it. And what I'm going to do is going to take a lot of the white paint and a tiny little bit of that creamy yellowy colour that I've just created, because I don't want to be using pure white. I want to save the pure white for the final highlights. And just with a little bit of water added, I'm going to start to add in a little bit more detail fur. Oh, thank you, Leanne. So these angled brushes we can use in two ways. You can use them sort of lengthways to do these tufts of fur, or you can use the pointed tip for a little bit more detail work. So you can put in sort of like loose individual strands with it as well. So we can use it this way for the bigger work, for the softer bits, or we can use the very tip for things like loose strands of fur. Starting to get a little bit of form to the body now. Hopefully, anyway. In my opinion, we are. Maybe not in yours. Okay. So I'm just building up. I'm hoping it'll come to life when I put the eyes in. In fact, that's what I might do next before I start putting lots of details in, or putting some details in anyway. I'm not going to go overly detailed with this one. I might put the eyes in and hopefully give it a little bit more life. I think that might be what it's missing. Hello, if there's anyone new joining, feel free to ask any questions. I am here to help. Feel free to introduce yourself. Tell me about what work you like creating. Tell me where you're from. I don't really like how harsh this line is here. It looks a little bit too sort of like a straight line. So I'm just going to try and knock it back a little bit by just softly brushing my brush over the surface. I think that looks a little bit better. So just gonna continue to build up that shape. Maybe just gonna add a little bit more water to my brush. I want to keep it quite loose, quite washed, almost like building up layers of watercolor, really. That's pretty much exactly how I'm using this technique. But obviously, adding the extra layers of water with watercolors start to blend the paints, whereas with acrylics, it won't because the acrylic paint is already dried. Put a few more tufts of this white fur around. Hopefully it's starting to come together a little bit more, starting to look a little bit more 3D. Maybe it's going to take a little bit longer than 20 minutes. Might have overestimated that or underestimated it. So anyone that has been watching my videos for a while, do you have a favorite video? Do you think any particular videos of mine are the best video, or any particular type of the videos are the best video? Any that I should make more of? Ah, thank you, Sharon. Ah, the EWT, yes. So the third charity that these pieces are going to be contributing towards is the Endangered Wildlife Trust. So again, just for anyone that's joining us now, each of the pieces that I'm going to be creating today are going to be available for £140 on the Artist for Painted Dogs website. Um, there's a link to that in the description, and each one, 50% of the proceeds will be going towards the three charities. Thank you, Paul. Which lion video is your favourite? Okay, let's add in some eyes. I want to give it a little bit of life now. So I think to keep this nice and simple, I'm going to start with a little bit of burnt umber. I'm going to just give him brown eyes. So what I'm going to do for the eyes is just put in a circle of burnt umber first. Because the eyes are so tiny, we don't really need to go into massive amounts of detail with them. Just going to slowly build up the colours and hopefully have them in the right place so he doesn't look cross-eyed. So I've got my burnt umber down. Then I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna, a little bit more orange, and just near the bottom, just put a little bit of a highlight. I like the big lion too. That is one of my favourite paintings I've ever done. Me and Amber, or Amber and I, will be doing an exhibition in Manchester, in the UK. on the 19th of November, and that piece is going to be part of the exhibition um, with Manchester Art Fair. Amber has done a very similar big piece, so the same size, but a tiger. So they are matching pieces that hopefully will draw some people into our little booth and hopefully make some sales. How did you find the, or how did you like the eye video? I thought it was going to be quite a good video and quite a few people would like it, but not many people have actually watched that video yet. It didn't go down as well as I thought it would. In fact, it's probably the worst video I've put out in terms of views for the last 6 months. The one that was the realistic eye. I think maybe it's because most people are. I mean, I am called studio wildlife, and I do paint wildlife most of the time, so I can't really expect anything else when I'm not painting wildlife. But I think most of the people that are watching my channel at the minute are there for the wildlife art rather than just general art. I'm hoping to be able to do a little bit of both because a lot of the techniques used for painting that skin on the eye, and a lot of the techniques used when painting that realistic eye, they are completely transferable to painting other animals. So painting like elephants and gorillas and rhinos and like any animal with an eye, basically. But yeah, I thought it would do better than it did. It didn't do very well. You probably, yeah, I did. I spent so long sort of painting it, trying to get it right. I was just like, Amber, you have a go. And she did, because she's never painted an eye like that as well. So I thought it'd be nice if she had a go. I like sort of we do that for each other sometimes. Sometimes I'll help finish some of her paintings. More often than not, she'll help me finish some of my paintings. But we'll always help each other. So like when I see her and she's working on a painting, if there's something that I think is not quite right or something that needs adjusting, I'll tell her. If she thinks there's something that's not quite right, she'll tell me with my paintings, and we'll just help each other out to try and create the best possible artwork. Ah, very strange. Hopefully, it'll start maybe popping up a little bit. Um, but yeah, I sort of did a. I've done a. I think it's a about 12-minute video on painting a realistic eye, but then I also did a full sort of. It took me about 3 hours, and I'm a video on my Patreon channel. Um, but the YouTube video is really good as well. I took the time to make a script for it. I took the time to sort of really, really think about what I was doing when painting that eye. And I think it's one of my best made videos that I've done. I've definitely put a lot of time and effort into it, more so than some of the other videos, um, or at least the editing. All the videos take time and effort because I'm going to have to paint them. Um, but hopefully it'll build up. Hopefully more people will see it in the future. Okay. Right, let's now try and put some sort of more highlighty bits in the black fur. So I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna and a little bit of the blue to create a grey again. And then I'm going to mix it with some white. and then maybe a little bit more blue. Let's keep the blue, the highlights of the fur quite blue. So I'm going to just use the detail brush again. I'm just going to start to pick out some small little tufts of fur, not being too precise, not being too exact, just trying to build up some highlighted fur, just reinforce these strands a little bit and reinforce the shape and the direction of the fur. Kind of looks a little bit green, which is good because it shows that it's reflecting from the background. Okay. Same for the other leg. So down here at the bottom, we can add a few more little tufts of fur. I quite like that it looks quite green, actually. That was a happy little accident. Do you know what I said about colour mixing before? I knew how colours would mix. Well, obviously not. But sometimes things work out well, and you've just got to go with it. Let's put a few little strands down here. And then the same down here. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that so far. What I want to do now is just try and purple that up a little bit. So we want a little bit of red there, a little bit of blue, and then let's add some more white. And we want just another slightly lighter layer of highlights, because we don't want all those highlights the exact same colour. So let's start putting in this lighter purpley colour just in some places. Just like this. Don't quite like the harsh black line on that side, so I'm now going to try and get rid of it just using this purple. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. And then same for this side. Let's just add some more of that little lighter purpley colour. Just like this. And then I'm going to actually add a little bit of burnt umber as well, because I want it a little bit darker, and a little bit of burnt sienna. Because, in fact, let's go a little bit of red as well. I want a light kind of like burgundy colour, just for the fur as we get to this stage here, just for the fur around this part of the body. Just, again, just adding that little bit of variation in the colours. It just gives the viewer something more to look at. Let's put a few little strands of that over here. And let's put a few little strands of it under here. Under here. And also we'll put a little bit of that same colour just at the back of the leg. There, like that. You know what, let's put some near these ears as well. Just for fun. Okay, let's go back to the purple colour now. And what I'm going to do is just put in the purple of this front leg, so we separate it from the back a little bit. Same thing up here, we need to separate the ear from the back that little bit more. And then we'll add a little bit more of the highlights near the back. And then same for both the ears. Let's tough this up a little bit. Let's really, really make it a nice, soft, fluffy ear. Same for this ear. Let's put a few little highlights in. And then let's also just put a few little highlights in the fur of the face. Let's also use this time just to put a couple of little highlights on the panda's nose. Right, I think it's starting to get somewhere. Looks a little bit distorted on the camera. It looks a little bit better in real life, a little bit rounder near the bottom. You know what, I'm also going to take some of this colour and just down at the bottom, just put in a few just little sort of loose strands. Just rough, loose strands just down there. Okay, final bit for the blacks. Just going to take a little bit more white, quite a bright white now, but mix it with that purpley colour just to create a very, very light purple, and in just a few places. So just along this edge here, just to set it out from the background a little bit more, just going to add a little bit of a almost white line just there to show it really catching that light. Okay, and then same thing again, I think, just for down here at the back. Just a little bit more colour, just dabbing it on. Okay. Yeah, I think I am happy with that so far. And then finally, I'm just going to take pure white now because I'm going to water it down so it won't actually appear pure white on my actual painting. Just going to add a few more sort of refined details of pure white, or almost pure white, for the rest of the fur. Hopefully you're enjoying the process so far. Hopefully you can see how I'm creating these little sketches. This one's taken a little bit longer than I thought, but I am quite happy with how it's turning out. So I'd rather spend a little bit longer on it and produce a few less pieces that are a better quality. Some nice sort of sad eyebrows. So we can still see some of those yellows and those creamy colours showing through, which is really good. Just allows that little bit more variation, a little bit more interest to the painting. Yeah, again, keep asking question, guys. Keep like anything at all you want to ask, just go for it. Even talk about yourselves. Just have a conversation. What kind of things do you watch on TV? Just keep me company while I paint these pictures. Probably could have done this bit with a bigger brush, would have been a bit faster, but I've started now, so I'm just going to commit and use this brush still. Okay. Really getting somewhere now with this piece. I think it's gonna be pretty much finished. I'm just going to do a couple of little things to the background and then it'll be done. Unless there's anything that you guys can see that might need adjusting, please do just let me know. Let's actually... No, Amber is my girlfriend, so Amber is an artist as well. Me and Amber have been together for about two years and July, what month are we in now? November. 2 years and about 6 months. And I couldn't be happier. Could not be happier. I think I'm gonna just add a little bit of thicker paint at the top. Just soft it up a little bit more, maybe put a little bit more white here. I think I am pretty happy with that now. I'm pretty happy with how that's turned out. I'm either gonna ruin it now or make it better. I'm not sure which. So what I'm gonna do is just put a band of a little bit of a darker colour here, just to try and make... We'll put like a band of darker bit here, a bit of darker bit there, just to make it pop out. So I'm going to get a little bit of the raw umber paint and I'm going to mix it with some green, just to create an almost browny green colour. And then going to keep it very watered down at this stage, because if I do make a mistake and I don't like it, if I work quickly, I can just use some water to get rid of it. But I just want to darken this edge, just to try and really make that panda pop out a little bit more. Then I'll probably do the same to this side as well. Try and make it pop out a touch more. And then I'm going to do the same thing just down at the bottom, just adding a little bit of green around here. Because what I'm going to add is some flicks of paint in a second and almost like dust, just to really finish it off. Or like splashes of water maybe. So hopefully you can see that. This bit is the bit that's either going to ruin it or make it better. So I think I'm going to use an almost turquoisey colour. I'll stick with the blues and the greens. I'm going to add some white and a little tiny little bit of the raw sienna, which is the orange, which should just neutralise the colour a little bit, just to reduce that saturation, because I don't want it to be too saturated. And all I'm going to do is just scumble over the top, just dry brushing, just some sort of like dust, very similar to the cheetah that I've just done, almost like it's going to be walking through like a waterfall or something, just even foliage, just sort of trying to get it fading out into the bottom of the canvas so that panda fits in the scene and isn't just floating on top of it. Thank you, Leanne. Sometimes I do, sometimes I just make it up as I go along. A little bit too much blue in there, but it doesn't really matter. Only a little sketch. I can probably try and knock it back a little bit. Yeah, that's better. Just going to add a little bit more white to this, just in some areas, just to lighten it up that little touch. And then what I'll do for the final little bit is just flick a little bit of white paint over the top. Right, so I'll just take my toothbrush again. Great tool, just a cheap little toothbrush, and it just creates these fantastic marks that just really make that piece pop. So I'm going to try and just do a few little bits, so not loads, just in there. Maybe a couple just near the top as well. And there we go. I think that's pretty much done. I'm pretty happy with that for a little sketch. So I'm going to, or a very big sketch. It has taken me a long time. It has taken me nearly 2 hours. But I'm just going to sign it now. What colour do you think I should sign in the bottom? I'm thinking either a dark blue or a dark green. Let's see what a almost dark turquoisey colour looks like. Bit of both. Morning, Sophie. Thank you very much. How are you? There we go. There's my panda finished. I'm just gonna take a photo of it so that it can be put up on the Artists for Painted Dogs website. So if anyone likes it and would like to help contribute towards some conservation efforts, it is available on the Artists for Painted Dogs website, which there is a link to in the description below. Oh, sorry, I just knocked my camera. Let's stabilize that. So which one should I paint next? So we've got I'll just take a little vote. So we've got the gorilla, we've got a wolf, we've got a grizzly bear, or we've got a polar bear. Polar bear? Polar bear. So gorilla, wolf, grizzly, or polar bear. You guys can choose. Ooh, that's 2 votes for gorilla. So we shall go for the gorilla, I think, then. Okay. Okay, so I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do the gorilla first, and then we'll do the polar bear afterwards. So just so that you can see them both next to each other. Hopefully they tie well together. We've got the cheetah, and we've got the panda. I really like them. Hopefully they sell, and hopefully we can raise some money for some charities and some conservation efforts. Okay. And we will get our gorilla up. Okay, so there's the gorilla. I'll just send the picture to Heather at Artists for Painted Dogs. And then we'll get started. Okay. Right, let's get started. So I'm going to follow the exact same process. What I am going to do first, though, is very quickly just clean my palette. My palette, I'm just using a glass table, and I've just got a palette scraper here. So all I do when I need to clean my palette is just spray some water over the glass palette, and then just use the scraper just to scrape away all that excess paint. May as well start fresh on a new painting. I have a nice clean palette. What time are we on? So we're on about 10 to 11. I'm going to time myself for this one, and I'm only going to give myself an hour. Well, not at all, Leanne. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for keeping me company, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. And if you do have any questions at all, just feel free to pop them in the comments um, when you watch the video, and I'll try and answer them. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much. So just cleaning off my palette. It is a little bit messy. Just got some loo roll next to me that I'm just using as tissue just to clean up. So I'm going to start in pretty much exactly the same way. Just going to find my reference photo. All of the reference photos that I've got are from the website Unsplash. So they are free to use, which is fantastic. Okay, so I think the gorilla I'm going to do in very much the same way or the same process. I'm just going to try and do it a lot faster. So I apologize if I stop talking for a little bit, but I will get a little bit sort of drawn into the painting a little bit. So just feel free to ask questions as we go, and I will try and remember to look up and answer them. So I'm going to start in exactly the same way. This is a gorilla, mountainous, foresty gorilla. So we are going to paint it in a very similar background to the panda that we've just done. So I'm going to start with a green. Let's make this one a little bit darker, I think, actually. So I'm going to make a greeny black up first, mixed with a little bit of brown. So I want this one to be a little bit darker. Let's put a little bit more atmosphere into this piece. So again, just taking that 1-inch flat brush and just starting my first wash, just outlining the piece, almost outlining the drawing. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it helps to get as close as possible. Just move this away because it's banging on a light a little bit, making a little bit of noise. So yeah, just putting this wash in, just the same as before. A little bit of an interesting background, a little bit of an abstracty background again. Dead easy to do. Really, really simple, but really, really effective. Or I like to think it's really effective anyway. It's nice just having these little washes right now for some more saturated green. So I'm just going to take the pure green, mix it with a little bit of the cadmium yellow, and just put some of that green over my canvas, just in some random areas. Just being a bit looser with this one. And then I'm going to put a little bit of yellowy green in as well, but a little bit lighter yellowy green. So I've added a little bit of white because this is going to be a little bit more opaque, a little bit less transparent. And I'm just going to sort of pop that on again, just anywhere, just leaving these cool little sort of patterns knocking around. And then I'm going to get a little bit more water. And I'm just going to add a few more of the darker patterns. So a few darker lines as well. Where I want most of the light being on this piece is going to be coming from the right-hand side. I think it's flipped on the screen, or it might be, but this is the right-hand side of the piece for me. So it's going to be coming back. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this darker pattern there at the start rather than doing it at the end like I did last time. Again, same thing. I'm just going to match it on this side just because there's going to be a little bit of light coming on his hand, and I also want to balance that composition a little bit, almost like he's walking through a jungle area. Let's put a little bit of that darker colour. Let's get a little bit more on the top there. Okay, and maybe let's just put a few little drops of a blue in as well. Just sort of, where am I going to put that blue? Let's put the blue a little bit there, a little bit there. Doesn't have to be perfect. Is that tissue technique in a second. Abstract shapes. Rips are fine as well. Don't worry about those. Try and put the impression of a little bit of foliage down at the bottom. So some leaves. Just using the edge of that brush. Just trying to abstract it up a little bit. Then take my tissue paper, just like before, and just start to dab some nice, interesting patterns. I really think this really does look like sort of undergrowth, and foliage, and trees, and leaves. And it's just a nice, simple way to create that effect, the impression of those leaves, rather than, it's not like going in painting every single leaf. It's never going to be great for super realistic painting, but it's good for just this impression of leaves in the background. Okay, just sorting out the panda going up on the website now. Sorry, and I'll just let that dry a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit different with this background. I'm actually going to use a small, or this sort of medium-sized round brush here to actually do a few more abstract marks to indicate the foliage. So I'll do that in a second once this has dried off. I'm just going to sort out putting that panda on the website if anyone would like to buy it. Okay. Sorry about the delay. So what we're going to do is add some little bits of darker foliage near the bottom. So we're going to take some black and some green, and using this round brush, just going to start adding some little abstract shapes and marks. Some of them going up, some of them going down, some of them using the big side of the brush, some of them using the point. Just adding these little sort of patterns and textures and a little bit more going on than before. And what I might actually do with this one is just add a few little sort of abstracty little just lines, just bits everywhere, just almost indicating like little trees and scumbles and little twigs. I don't know what scumbles are, but little twigs, little bits in the background. Just a little bit more. I don't like that one as much, but well. And then I might actually do the same thing with this lighter colour that we created. Maybe put a little bit of yellow ochre in there, a little bit of green, a little bit of cadmium yellow, just to create quite a saturated greeny yellow colour, and just do exactly the same thing. Just put in a few little dots, dashes, lines, whatever. It doesn't matter if the background's not completely dry. Picking up some of those colours will just add to the effect. Let's put some of those marks at the top as well, just dot them around. Just little dots, just like that. And then we can also go a little bit lighter. So let's add some more cadmium yellow, a little bit more of the green, and then some more of the white. And then we'll use this bit a little bit more sparingly. And we just want to, just a few little dots and dashes here and there, just to give the viewer something else to look at as well. Just like this. Now the background isn't finished at this stage, but this is just where we'll leave it until we've actually painted in that gorilla. Okay, I'm quite happy with that so far. So this is quite a new brush. So one little tip with your acrylic brushes, if you don't want them to get deformed, just rinse them off in the water and then take them out of the water. Don't leave them face down in that water because it just sort of ruins them. They get squashed and they get frayed and they don't work anymore. So just take them out, just like I've done, and then just pop it stood up is the best thing to do. Okay, next I'm going to start to just block in some of the darker colours. So last time I started with a wash, and that's exactly, oh, in fact, last time I started by drawing out and sketching the black, which I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. So I'm just using that small detailed brush, the one from Boldmere, and I am just going to sketch in some of those lines that I've got down. Just being quite rough with it. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I'm just trying to get the impression of these lines, just because I'm going to do a wash in a second, and I don't want to lose all my graphite lines. And again, my hand's going in the painting a little bit. It doesn't really matter too much. Like see here in this corner, that's where my finger has just picked up that paint. Doesn't really matter. Let's just put another one somewhere else. Just whack a few in here and there just to even it out. So just trying to work a little bit quicker with this one. I've got about an hour left. I'm going to give myself till 12 o'clock and then I'll have a little break and do part 2 of the live stream after that. Because I have not eaten yet. I've not had any breakfast. So it'd be nice to go and get some lunch before I start on the next section of these sketches. I'm actually going to just sort of block out some areas where I want these shadows to go as well, just because I think it might look cool. Yeah, literally no other reason other than I think it might look cool. Having some of these like dark lines in there, just showing through in that final piece. Almost like calligraphy, kind of. I mean, not very good calligraphy, but kind of like calligraphy anyway. Or like comic booky kind of style, mixed with a little bit of realism, mixed with a little bit of abstractism. Okay. So just outlining these. And again, anyone that's new, anyone that's just joined the stream, please just feel free to introduce yourself, say hello, tell me where you're from, tell me what kind of art you're into. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got any questions about anything, whether it's this process, whether it's anything in general, whether it's anything about me, hey, just ask away. Everything's always a happy accident. Okay, so there is my little sort of sketch. What I'm going to do just very quickly is just give it a little bit of a grey wash. We're just going to use the black for this. I think it'd be the easiest colour to use. Just going to give him a little bit of a wash. Not bothered too much if I get rid of some of the lines I've just put down. Most of them are dry anyway. Put some of that black in the background as well. Okay, again, I'm just gonna have to mute the video a second, just while I do the hair drying, just to dry it off so I can work on the next layers a little bit quicker. So I apologise while I just mute it. Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully you can all hear me again now. So just the same as last time, what I'm going to do is take a filbert brush. Now for anyone that's new to the video or the stream, filbert brush are the ones with these little round sort of brush heads. And I'm just going to take some black paints, mix it with, I'm going to say a little bit of blue for this one. I want quite cold shadows. And I'm just going to start to block in some of those darkest shadows. Just pretty much the same shadows that I drew before. So I'm using a little bit of water as well, so it's not completely opaque, not completely solid. There's going to be a little bit of variation in it, but not loads. I'm just literally just blocking in those shadows. I'm going to try and be a little bit quicker with this piece because I do want it done before 12 o'clock so I can go and have some lunch. Again, I just want to say thank you for everyone that's watching and keeping me company while I'm doing this. It is really helpful. I mean, there's only 7, but 7 is more than oh, there's 8 people now. Welcome. But that is more than I thought that I would have. So thank you very much for joining. Don't think I'm actually going to put too much detail in these hands, so I'm just going to keep them a little bit darker. Okay, let's now start to put a little bit of detail, or the shadows, sorry, in the other arm. Just using that filbert brush again. I'm gonna just fade all of them into the background, just because it's a little sketch. I don't want to spend hours trying to get all the like feet right. Just gonna try and do it quite quickly. So I'm just fading them all out at the bottom rather than painting in the feet. I'm gonna give the impression of one of the hands, just this one over here, but the rest I'm just gonna fade out with some leaves or some like fog or some twigs, something like that. I don't know if you can hear the banging, but there's something really exciting going on outside. I'm actually getting a purpose-built little sort of studio in the garden being set up and being built. So hopefully in a month or two, you should see on the YouTube channel a few more videos in a new location, which will be nice, and hopefully it'll be able to be a bit cleaner and the production quality of those videos will increase a little bit because at the minute I am just painting in a bedroom. And slightly off, just to the left of the camera, is a load of rubbish, um, which you can't see. A load of stuff from a bedroom that I use every day that wouldn't look great on a video stream. Just like, I don't know, receipts and stuff like that. Toiletries. Don't know why I'm talking about toiletries. I'm going to stop. So I'm just using the black just to start to establish some of these shadowy colours, just trying to establish a touch of form. I think for this one, I'm just going to keep the eyes very, very simple and in shadow. So I'm not going to be putting too much detail into the eyes. Same for the mouth. Thank you, Kevin. But yeah, as I said before, any questions at all about me, about the art, about your art, if you've got any things you want advice on, just ask away while I'm live, and yeah, I can answer them as best I can. A little bit more dark over here, just because I want some of those dark colours to show through later on. And then I can start thinking about add in some lighter colours. Let's just put a little bit thicker paint over here because I really want this bit to be very dark black. Just really reinforce where those shadows are, where those darkest sections are going to be. And again, I have no problem using that pure black in the painting. Because what I do is tend to do a lot of glazes, and when I do the glazes over the top, some of that pure black disappears and gets saturated a little bit with a bit of colour. But even if I wasn't glazing it, I'm fine using pure black. I know some artists don't like using pure black, but I see no problem with it at all. I can tell the face is going to need a lot of work for this one. This face is going to be a real pain to do and get looking right. So I might save that till last. Right, I'm going to build up some of the sort of mid-tony grey blues. So I'm going to start with blue, mix it with some black, touch of raw umber, just to brown it off a little bit, and then a tiny, tiny little bit of white. So this is going to be my first sort of dark grey colour. And I'm going to just fill in some of the bits that I've missed, just kind of blending it together with that black shadow. Just trying to get a almost blocking done first, and then I'll build the lighter colours up over the top to establish the form. Oops, there's a little bit of white in there, but that's okay. Doesn't really matter too much. Right, same thing over here. Trying to just roughly follow the shape of the fur, but it doesn't matter too much at this stage. Just essentially just doing a darker wash just to establish a bit more of a solid base coat. I love using the filbert brushes for this kind of thing because I can use just the tip of it just to start tufting up the edges, which just gives it that little bit less of a drawn look, little bit more real, little bit of loose fur, and it just really, really improves the overall appearance of the thing that you're trying to paint. So rather than having like loads of really, really hard edges, you've got some of these softer edges, some of these frayed edges, and it just makes it look so much better. Okay, really just wash over the face. This is going to take so much work. Hopefully it'll come together when I start putting some highlights in that face, but we shall see. Okay, so I've got that bit done. Now I can start to add a lighter layer. So I'm just going to keep the same colour for now and just add a little bit more white to the mix, just lighten it up that little bit more. And then for my other areas, just going to start to add that lighter colour. It's going to get a lot lighter than this, but I just like to work in these stages just to build up all this shape and build up this form and just build up a little bit more variation rather than just painting it all the highlight colour or all the final colour. I like seeing these subtle changes in the colours and in the tones and in the values. Just makes it a little bit more interesting for me and a little bit more interesting, I'm hoping, for the viewer. thumb in, a couple of fingers, just giving the impression of those thumbs and fingers. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. But tufty hair. Then let's start adding a few little, give the impression of these strands of fur. I have a feeling I'm going to have to do a bit of darker glazing in some places for this one. Okay, let's put this final bit of this layer just over here, just doing thin washes still. Nothing like majorly substantial. Just going to build those washes and they will get more and more substantial as the lighter and lighter layers come over the top. Okay, starting to get somewhere. Other than the head, obviously. The head does not look anything like it's supposed to. Let's add some more white to the mix now. And I'm also going to add a touch of burnt sienna, just to warm up the colour a little bit, just to put a little bit more variation in, just so we're not keeping everything exactly the same. And then what we're going to do is just start to put in some of this new fur. Just using the side of the filbert brush. Okay. So I'm just going to repeat that exact same process all over. We're still sort of in my sort of lighter shadows at this stage. We've not got to our highlights yet. Just trying to build up some interesting shapes and some textures and some patterns that will all show through in the final piece, in the final picture. Give him a bit of a kneecap. And then tuft up the rest of his fur. There's his calf. Let's paint his calf in. Again, just tuft up the rest of that fur at the back. I'm actually going to bring this to almost pure white in these absolute highlighted bits. So it's still got a very, very long way to go. Has anyone got any questions about anything? Anything art related? Anything non-art related? I feel like I'm doing a lot of just sort of mumbling and babbling on a little bit. Feel free to ask questions so I can start saying some useful bits of information. Thumb in. Right up on this head. Let's try and get a bit of form to this head, just a little bit. Okay. Next layer now. um, it is a skill that I have developed over the last couple of years. Um, I do feel like a lot of what I am saying is nonsense, though, so I've not developed it that well. I think as the day goes on and I get more and more paintings done and less to talk about, the nonsense that I'm saying is going to get a lot more nonsensical. Oh, that's good. Just wait, it will get there. It does take me a lot longer to paint when I do the talking, though. I do have to sort of slow down a little bit. Usually, I'd work a little bit faster than this. So that panda that I painted before took about an hour and a half to an hour and 40 minutes um, while I was talking. Whereas if I wasn't talking, I probably could have got it done in under an hour. So I do have to think about things a little bit more. Do you and your wife paint, Kevin? It's okay. I will be putting the panda up as a video. All of this will be a video um, later on. Once it's finished live streaming, I will just put it up on YouTube for anyone to watch later on. So if there's any that you miss, you can just have a look and watch them. I'm also going to be splitting it into two parts, so it's not like a 6 hour long video. I think there's going to be need to be a lot of glazing some darks back in for this one. Not quite getting the colours and things right where I wanted. Oh, that's lovely. Do you paint mostly wildlife, or is it all sorts? Okay, I'm gonna start putting some lighter colours in now. I'm gonna try and make it a little bit more saturated, add a little bit more colour into it. So I'm gonna just use a little bit of raw sienna because I'm just not liking how grey it's looking. So just add a little bit of raw sienna to white, and this is gonna look a little bit strange at first because it's gonna be such contrasting colour to what I've already put down. But I just think all the colours are getting a little bit too similar, even though they're getting lighter. It's getting a little bit flat looking, there's not much variation. So I'm gonna really try and make it pop with a much lighter and much warmer colour. So it's gonna be completely different, or hopefully completely different. Not even making that much of a difference. But, oh well. Ah, nice. Was it that very first sort of tiger painting that I did where I used the airbrush for the back of the fur? Um, I've had an airbrush for ages. So, like, I got bought an airbrush when I was probably about 10, and I never really used it for, like, wildlife paintings, and then I just thought one day, "I'll give it a try and see how I could use it like, combined with the brushwork," and it's made everything so much easier. Like, using an airbrush to glaze soft colours, using the airbrush to glaze, like, soft backgrounds, it's just made everything much faster, and anyone that's sort of, like, new or, like, an intermediate painter, wanting to improve their backgrounds or their painting process and make it a little bit easier, I do recommend looking into buying an airbrush, because it has sped up a heck of a lot of my processes. Um, it's really good for creating like backgrounds and soft color transitions. And like obviously it's not using a brush, so it doesn't leave any brush marks, and it just it just makes everything so much easier. It's really good for putting like vignettes, so like faded black bits around the edges or white colors or whatever. It's just really nice for having some subtle, soft transitions like between colors and between edges and things. And as I've been saying in a couple of my videos, that's what really makes sort of realism stand out is when you've got the right balance of soft and hard edges. And using that airbrush just really allows you to put in some of those soft edges and add to the realism. Like there's some really, really good wildlife artists out there and just general artists who can create incredibly realistic looking paintings just using an airbrush. Um, and I think they look so realistic because you can get that like soft looking pattern. You can't create as hard edges with those airbrushes, and it just makes for some fantastic, like lovely, like buttery kind of looking paintings. But coupled with brushwork, you can really get some nice combinations between like hard edges and soft edges, and it just really can make all the difference with a painting. I don't think I've watched Andy Caddick, or seen Andy Caddick's work, so I'll have to have a look and have a Google later. But yeah, I can't do just the airbrush on its own. I need to use the brushes as well. I don't think I have. I think you like for a lot of that detail work, you need quite professional grade airbrushes, and I've just got some cheap airbrushes from the internet, which are great for the big soft glazes, but not so good for detail work. Okay, starting to get a little bit happier with this. A little bit more interesting. Just got to really sort out that face. Oh, thank you, Alistair, and welcome. Yeah, anyone that's new to the stream, please just say hello. Please just leave some comments. Ask any questions. Just feel free to ask away, and I will try and answer everything that I can. So, what I think I'm going to do now, probably because I'm going to need to do a lot of glazing, is start to use a different brush and just go a heck of a lot lighter with my colours. So I'm going to take just this frayed angled brush here because I've only got about 20 minutes left to finish this painting, or I'm going to give myself about 20 minutes to finish this painting. I'll probably end up going over a little bit, but that's okay. So I'm just going to take some white and just added to that white, I'm going to put a touch of blue and a touch of red, just to create this kind of like silvery, reddy, purpley, bluey colour. And then just using some relatively thin, watered down paints, I'm just going to use my angle brush to start to put in some of this lighter fur. I am actually going to use a little bit of pure white later on, so it will get lighter than this. But this is just to really try and start to make the picture pop a little bit more, establish some of that form a little bit more. Okay, so start to like think of where the folds in the skin are, or in the fur, where that muscle is going to be. Just start to establish where those slightly, not like completely highlight bits are, but where some of the actual light is hitting. Trying to light up the body a little bit. So I'm going to use a smaller detail brush for the final highlights. So I think quite a lot of this back is going to be in the light. So we can lighten this bit up a little bit. And then definitely all of this edge down here is going to be in the light. Okay, it's looking a little bit better, I think. We'll also put a little bit of light up on the top of the head. Yeah, I'm actually gonna have a break in about 20 minutes to half an hour, and on that break, I'm gonna have my lunch and I'm gonna look at Andy Caddick's work so we can talk a little bit about it. You're still on. That looks a little bit better. I was struggling to get the form. I was struggling to get the sort of like shape of that upper arm in, but I think it looks a little bit better now. It's a little bit more round, a little bit more 3D. And then again, we'll put a few of these little hairs in here, just like that. Maybe we'll go a little bit lower with these bits. Same from the back, this back leg, let's get that in. This is canvas, so it's an 8" by 10" um, canvas. I'm not sure what brand it is. It's not the best quality canvas. Um, I mean, it's good, but the grain is a little bit thick, really. I think if I wasn't doing sketches and I was doing sort of like more finished paintings, I would have gessoed the surface of the canvas a little bit, just to smooth it down a little bit, because I quite like working on smoother backgrounds. But what I really do like about them is that they've got this like cardboard, like card backing on the back, which means it doesn't buckle when you paint on it, which means it's a really hard, firm surface, which I really like when I'm painting. I prefer painting on wood panels really. Um, but I saw these and they seem perfect for what I was doing today. So I picked up 6. A little bit of, I think I want a little bit of like an edge on this hand. Yeah, I like that. And then just gonna put in a few little bits of where I think there would be the highlights on the face. I am gonna refine the face a little bit more, which is why I think it will take me a little bit longer than 20 minutes to do. Okay. Gonna just whack in a few more colours now, just to make it a touch more interesting. So I'm just going to get some burnt sienna, just put a little bit of an orangey colour up on his head, just up there. Maybe a touch of that same colour just on his arm, a little bit on his body, just because I thought it was getting a bit blue and a little bit boring. A little bit on his legs, just down there, a little bit on this arm. That's a little bit better. Now let's take a little bit of burnt umber, so a little bit of a darker brown. Mix it with a touch of black, just a darker brown. And then we'll put some of this up here as well. Some dark brown. Again, down here, a bit of dark brown. A little bit here. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot better. Okay, what I am now going to do is I think I'm going to save that face till last, But what I'm going to do is just use my small detail brush now to add some very watered down pure white paint. So just put in some final little highlights in the gorilla's fur. Just trying to make it pop that little bit more. So not everywhere, and it doesn't have to be completely perfect, but I like having these sort of like nice white sections in these little sketches just to try and make them pop. I don't really use pure white like this in my larger paintings. I only save it for the eyes and things, the bits where you really want that pure white to pop. But with these, you need to make as much pop as possible because they're only small little sketches. I want it to stand out from the background a little bit more. Okay, where else do I want it? So I want a lot of this white on the back of the gorilla. This edge here, trying to really round that leg off, and then I just want to separate this front leg from the back leg a little bit. So I'm just going to put a little bit more white on this. Sorry, this leg that's in front, not the actual front leg. Obviously, it's a back leg. I just want to separate it a little bit, make it two different legs, and then we'll finally just put a little bit of a highlight on the back of that leg. And I think as well, just a few little tufts of fur just there. And then the same thing on this front leg, just a few little bits of this whiter colour. Not everywhere, just in some places. Okay, now what I'm going to try and do is just refine the face a little bit more. So let's see what we can do here. So I want a little bit of a brow showing through there. I want a little bit more highlight just here. And then we want some more of that ear showing. So we're going to have a little bit of top bit of the ear and a little sort of C shape for another bit of the inner part of the ear. And a couple of little lines. So I'm going to add some black to that in a second, and hopefully that should make that ear pop a little bit more. And then let's try and just refine some of these highlights around the nose as well. I think we're going to have little one there, little one there. Let's put a few little sort of like lines in. I'm hoping when I put the black paint down, I can refine this a little bit more and it'll look a little bit better than what it does now. Because that does not look like a gorilla's face. Okay, so I'm just going to take some pure black now and what I'm going to try and do is just refine this face and head a little bit more. I'll try not to get my head in the way. So let's put in the ear a little bit more. So black there, black there. Go. Got a bit more of an ear now. Then we want a few little sort of like wrinkle lines there. Wrinkle line there, and then establish a little bit more of the shape of that brow. Then what we want is some nostrils. Some nostrils in, and refine the shape of that nose. And the mouth. And then his chin. And we'll just raise up that shoulder a little bit because I think that's what's not looking quite right. Raise up that shoulder, just use it to tough that off a little bit. And then do just a tiny little bit of glazing, just with the black, just underneath the mouth, and just where his nostrils are. Just like that. Then we're going to take a little bit of blue, a little bit of our black. I'm just going to do a little bit more glazing, just trying to improve the colours and the tones that I can see here. So I'm just going to knock some of these highlights back, just a touch. I will bring them back, but I just want to try and get a little bit more of the shape. Okay, that colour's looking a little bit blue, so I'm going to add a little bit of orange just to grey it up a little bit, just to desaturate it a tiny little bit. And start refining the face a little bit more. Go a little bit lighter if we wanted to. Start building up all those shapes, just really nice and simply. Just looking a touch green. I'm just going to add a little bit more orange to it, just to get rid of some of that blue, and then a little bit more white. And then I think we're going to be pretty much nearly done with this. I'll just refine that background a little bit more, and then I think I'll be pretty happy with how it's turned out. Still looks a little bit off the face, but I think it'll be all right. I don't want to go into too much detail on the face. I want to keep it quite loose. Okay, and then I'm going to get some of that really like light purpley colour that I made before, just for some final little bits of touch-ups to the highlights, and just trying to bring that colour and tie it in to the rest of the picture. Take a little bit more white now, just lighten it up a little bit, just for a final little couple of touches. Where else do I want some of that colour? Let's have a look. We'll just have a little bit there and a little bit under the edge of that mouth and a little bit there. I think starting later, I'll say about 1:30 is my plan. I'll probably finish this in about 5 minutes, and then I'll have an hour and a half break just to update some things on the website, and then I'll make a start again about 1:30. I'll say 1:30. Thanks for talking, and I will hopefully see you in a bit then. Just adding some thicker dark paint now, just in some areas, just to darken it up a touch. I also want to add a little bit more dark paint just up here. Just like that. I think that is just a touch too dark. In fact, what I'm going to do actually is just change and deviate from my reference photo slightly and just put a little bit of a lighter highlight on that side of the face. Just the head here. I just think it'll help to separate it from that background a little bit. Okay. I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did before. I'm just going to add a couple of little darker areas just around the outside. So just mostly on this edge and near the bottom actually is where I'm going to go. In fact, I'm going to leave the edge. I'm going to just put a bit of a darker green colour, bit of a glaze, just near the bottom. Whereas my last ones, I went a little bit lighter near the bottom. I'm going to go a bit darker on the bottom here. So instead of it being like a fog, it's going to be more like the undergrowth that he's walking on. Okay. There is that, just darkened a little bit. Then I am going to take my filbert brush And I'm going to start doing exactly what I did before, just taking some green. I'm going to take a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow ochre, and then a little bit of black. I'm going to just start adding this foggy looking stuff. Even though it's not going to be fog for this guy, it's going to be sort of like the foliage that he's walking through. Just dabbing it on everywhere. Let's put some up here. I quite like these little marks that it's making. Let's put some up here as well. Just kind of like everywhere, just giving him something to walk on. Let's go a touch lighter with it, a little bit of yellow in there, a little bit of white. I'm not going super saturated with it though. And I'll still be quite grey green. Same thing, a couple of little saturated bits. Also show a bit of lighter bits, not saturated. Just dabbing it on. No particular order, just randomly. And let's do a little bit more now, a little bit more yellow in there. And then a little bit more white, just to lighten it up. Again, just repeat that process, just a couple of little dabs here and there. Doesn't have to be everywhere. Feel free to just like add some of those abstracted shapes up near the tops and the bottoms if you wanted to, like put some up here, just some little marks. Just like that. And the final thing I'm going to do, get my trusty toothbrush, and just using that same colour, that nice sort of greeny colour, just going to splatter some of that green over my canvas. Let's add a little bit of yellow to that. And then a little bit more white to make it a little bit more opaque. And let's just do the same thing, just a little bit of splattering. Make it even whiter. Still not pure white, but a little bit more white in there. Just some final little flicks, just to really pop. And then there we've got our gorilla. Right, I'm just going to leave this one like this. I will, however, sign it in the bottom corner. I think I'll just sign it with a little bit of a dark green right in the bottom, just over here. So we'll take some black and some green, a little bit of yellow ochre, and then I will just do my signature. There we go. So thank you guys so much for watching so far. I am going to take a short little break now, so I will reschedule a new stream at about 1:30, so about 1:30 is when I'll start again. And I've got three more pictures to do. So I've got a wolf, a grizzly bear, and a polar bear. Well, I think it's a grizzly bear. It might be a brown bear. I'm not too sure. But I'm going to start the next stream by doing the polar bear. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will hopefully see you again in about an hour and a half. So thank you so much. I'm just going to end the stream now, and I will see you later.